What's up, dudes? Max here, back after, nearly 20 hours of gameplay with the Marvel Tokon beta. Got a whole bunch of time, went into the wee hours of the morning, streamed way too much, but at least got a decent amount of impressions of the game to sort of like figure out how I feel, what's going on, what characters are capable of, and what the game is about. And what I kind of learned is that throughout my session of playing the game, many of the impressions that I had from the very beginning were still sort of the same, where it felt like we kind of like had an idea what the game is, where it's a game that doesn't directly incentivize tagging through like direct mechanics. There's no health recovery or anything like that. The game does seem to heavily emphasize a 1v1. It wants people to play it as a 1v1. However, we always got the feeling from the very beginning that there was going to be much more to this Tokon iceberg, where the top of this iceberg pretty much is like a 1v1 game with like Dragon Ball Fighters-ish kind of mechanics. And then if you go several layers deep, which at the time had not been discovered, it gets much crazier and there's a lot more stuff. I feel like I personally got right under the water to start utilizing some characters and tagging in ways that is like kind of cool and pretty unique, but mostly keeping it similar, keeping it safe. This is a game without a proper training mode. There was a tutorial, but did find some cool combo things and was pretty satisfied with the way some characters played. I will say though, that iceberg might have actually gotten deeper as the beta went along, so we'll revisit that a bit later in this video. Talking about some of the things I really enjoyed, the characters are really damn fun. Dr. Doom was the first one I initially hovered around, and it feels like he's intrinsically sort of difficult as a character. You kind of got to figure out what you want to do with him. His teleport doesn't seem naturally that great. It's the equivalent of an M. Bison teleport in Street Fighter V, where he dashes forward and backwards. But Doom can get some pretty interesting stuff off of this if you start combining assists, like neutral assists, beam assists, and stuff of the like. He absolutely has some fairly challenging combos. I personally found the DP input of the game to be a little weird. I had to really prioritize on the inputs that down forward was the last input for the Dragon Punch motion to successfully come out. And once I got used to that, it was like not that big of an issue. But Doom has some moves on his DP input that are like, you know, big electricity, and they're really good. So I was trying to do them a lot and getting other stuff, and I was like, this is challenging. But otherwise, I love his combo structure, man. I think his unique attack is one of my favorite unique attacks in the whole game. The Aegis Reflector sort of setup that he has is not only a defensive tool, it's also an offensive tool. It leads to some of the coolest looking combos of the game, where you're ping-ponging the enemy between the shield and yourself and picking back up. It's arguably some of my favorite stuff in Tokon right now, so I think I personally like Doom the most. Although, at the moment, I don't feel like he's necessarily great as a character by himself. Next up is Star-Lord, and Star-Lord I put the second amount of time into, of the most time. And yeah, this is just do-it-all guy. Star-Lord is one of the characters you're seeing the most in competitive play right now. He gets access to good damage, he gets access to really easy, really long combos. He gets a whole bunch of like utility with all of his moves. His normals are great, his guns are good, he's got okay keep away, and he's got a gimmick that leads to a restand state that allows you to mix people up like relatively easy. That's like sort of like layer 3 mix in the game right now, and that was really good. He's got like an empty jump, really good low, which is also an easy way to open people up. And his assist is one of the best in the game, although most people will not be using this dude as an assist. Most people are going to be using Star-Lord as like a point character to get to damage, to get to stuff. I really enjoyed his aerial combos because he has this move that is like fireball back, punch, or any button in the air, and it brings you back down to the ground to set up for an assist, and it's really easy to do. I feel like a lot of other characters, it can be sort of difficult to figure that out. Doom is one of those, where he doesn't have a way to get you back down to the ground super easy, but some characters do. Captain America and Star-Lord, for example. So I think Star-Lord is like one of the most accessible, easy to play, like get really good reward really quick kind of characters. A lot of assists help him out a lot, and I feel like he's arguably one of the most flashy in the game right now. Very fun. But I like Doom more because he's like harder, and it feels like getting to do the cool Doom stuff isn't as easy, and it feels more rewarding. Next up is Captain America, and Cap feels like the most all-rounder in the game, which is not surprising at all. I had fun with him to a certain degree. The most enjoyable part of him is his kick shield gimmick, and later on we were starting to actually figure out some very good stuff with it, where it's like, if you do up unique, when you're jumping in with somebody, you can sort of hit a button on the way down. There was some really fascinating stuff you could do with the shield. But I wasn't like finding that much crazy stuff with him because much of his combo potential is like relatively short to a certain degree until you really started using meter, and the fact that he can do a dragon punch and then recover on the way down with a button. The EX one lets you like really continue in the air even if you want to do more stuff. The medium does as well. That's really neat. It's different that a dragon punch has like recovery in some way. But what I noticed is that a lot of the dragon punches in the game, I tried to do them as reversals. I tried this with Cap a couple of times. On Wake Up, it would say reversal with my DP, at least I think it was, and then I would get stuffed. So it seemed like the dragon punches seemingly have like upper body invul. Got to play a bit more to find out. But when I was seeing myself getting stuffed on Wake Up reversal, doing my DP, I was like, uh-oh, these are different utilities than you're normally used to. You can throw them out in neutral to anti-air somebody or do them in combo. But yeah, I didn't love Cap at the end of my session. Unfortunately, I wanted to like him a lot more, but it felt like he is like a really heavy neutral character, like really controls the neutral with all of his insane mobility. And that mobility takes a little while to unlock. He feels the most like a Dragon Ball character, I swear, man. His jumping medium and all this stuff. I started fighting people in like the final session 5 or 6, what it was, where people were really utilizing the shield as like a protective barrier around Cap, and the manipulation of that started to be like, oh, so this guy can just sort of like hold out and then really fish for any button and convert any button into like not amazing damage, but decent damage. And most of the times when I was playing against Captain America, those games were going to time. Like they literally were. And I was like, oh, wow. So yeah, this guy is sort of like a battle of attrition character. And while my impressions of the character changed a bit after seeing some more stuff like that down the line, yeah, I don't think I love Cap in general. So I'm curious about other characters by the time the game comes out. Last up is Iron Man, and Iron Man's an interesting one because he gets this really interesting gimmick, which is flight. He can fly out of most of his special moves and unique attacks, which does seemingly set up for some really cool combo opportunities, and I was having fun with that. It's like you get these cool air combos that let you go laser into more buttons, into more specials. It's fun, it's neat. At the same point, I feel like it isn't really like real. A lot of it does lead to some pretty cool stuff where Iron Man feels like he's flying around a lot more than the other characters, but piloting him and getting him to, you know, weave in and out of stuff with flight is a little difficult. I do feel like he's susceptible to 2Hs, and 2Hs in this game are pretty similar to Dragon Ball 2Hs, where they're just like this big ass launcher meant to counter jump-ins, meant to counter like super dashes back in Dragon Ball. In this situation, it's like your universal big launching ass like down H, and it's going for a big combo after. And he sort of falls prey to that if you start entering flight mode right around and close to the opponent. You'd have to weave in and out. It'll take some expertise there. I think Iron Man's cool, but he's clearly one of like the tougher characters to use in the beta. And last but not least are characters that I didn't get to try, but I fought against a ton, which is Miss Marvel as well as Storm. Storm feels like great. She feels like really good to great. A lot of cool utility, easy rushdown. She doesn't feel super fast, but a lot of her combo and opportunities feel like they are not super difficult to get to. You use this EX wind in the air to bring them back down to the ground, to go into super, to go into assist. Everything just feels like it works pretty naturally with Storm. And her gimmick looks really fun. I see some really cool stuff moving around ice balls with her gimmick of wind all over the place. I like that a lot. Miss Marvel is a demon. Actual demon. I'm like, this character seems super cool when I was like first playing, and then you start playing again like, oh wait a minute, what do I do about that? Oh wait a minute, what do I do about that? Oh god, I thought I had a counter for certain things, and she just starts beating your ass. Yeah, Miss Marvel is nuts. Diaphone recently won the first TNS tournament with her. She is kind of like all over the place. Some of the most winningest players that I watch in Tokon are all using Miss Marvel because she is legit difficult to counter. And I'm trying to find counters with her and figure out what you can do against this stuff if there is, and the best option is just to like not be there. So yeah, what makes her so good? She doesn't have an air dash, she doesn't have inherently great mix by default, but she has this Spencer-like unique arm thing that stretches her across the screen and all over the place. And my dude, my god, this thing can feel really hard to stop. The hit's done on block. If they do it too close, you can punish it, but if they do it far away, she's almost like, I think, like guaranteed to get a hit after. Her auto combos are naturally really damn good that convert into good damage, and she has a powerful overhead that's mad quick and you can convert after. So my dude, this chick was like the demon in the beta. I do feel like she's somewhat of a scrub killer just in general, and characters with really powerful overheads are overall going to be quite good in this game. But as of right now, with a limited period of playtime, and if you just want to do stuff really fast, dude, Miss Marvel was the way to do it. So overall, I had fun with a lot of the characters. I think the characters are the most enjoyment I have with the game. And my first criticism, this is a 1v1 game to most, and is actually a 4v4 game where you utilize a whole bunch of characters. And seeing so much of the same stuff over and over again in a tag fighting game like Marvel Tokon is, was a bit exhausting. I do feel like I was seeing so much of similar things over and over again, from combo opportunities to this to that to auto combos. We'll talk about auto combos in a second for my grievances, but the thing that will absolutely benefit Tokon more is having a large roster. And I don't think they're going to get like 30 characters at the start. I think the chance of them getting 16 to 20 is a lot better, and that will just help out so much, man. At least for me personally, what we were seeing in the game as of right now, for the majority of the time, was very similar, and a lot of this stuff is going to change a lot when we get more characters, more mix, more cool tag opportunities. I think a lot of people felt that way when you're first playing this and you're in their first beta sessions, but don't worry, that's going to change a whole bunch with more characters moving forward. The next couple of positives I sort of can echo from previous interactions with the game, but also some more new ones. I dig the music. I think it's really good. I don't think it's as legendary as Guilty Gear music as of yet, but I think it's really good. And the visuals are awesome, dude. I think seeing the game in motion is just wonderful. It doesn't eclipse like Dragon Ball FighterZ, in my personal opinion. I like the art style in this more, but I think the overall presentation in Dragon Ball is just, that's going to be almost unmatched, man, for a very long time. But overall, like, matches look really cool. They look really fun. The camera angles, all this kind of stuff. The speed of the game seems like it's inherently too slow when you first start, but don't worry, this is one of those games where you play it more, it's almost going to be too fast when you start fighting people that are utilizing all these mechanics and all of these characters and actual tag stuff within an actual match. Next up is the auto combo stuff, and yes, unfortunately, auto combos are a huge part of the game, and we already knew that this was the case from the previous beta at EVO. However, in this build of the game, they're seemingly better. As we're exposed to it more with more players, more opportunities, you sort of see that hitting a lot of buttons in situations where, you know, you're a casual player, much less a medium level player, can actually be not bad. You can convert well off of auto combos, and they seemingly lead to really good damage, like really high damage. In some moments where I was starting some attacks with, you know, maybe not the most optimal situation, I found that, man, if I just mashed square 3 times and did super, that would have done way more damage. It actually would have done significantly more damage. So there's an auto combo oddity right now in between, where some of the auto combos seemingly do a lot of damage, but some of the manual combos, which could lead to more stuff, maybe don't do as much. That's not in an optimal situation. You got to use like more meter, EX's corner, like all that kind of stuff if you want to really get crazy damage. But to me, the auto combos are sort of nuts because they are legit good, and they do cross up, as in they do have like tracking. So they will switch sides, they will continue animation on the square one. And that's sort of rough. I I was not expecting the auto combos to be similar to Dragon Ball. They don't reach nearly as far, but they almost have like anti-air capabilities on some characters. It's really crazy. That part was leading to a lot of like frustration for me when having to deal with that all the time in so many matches. And then I was finally getting some matches as time went on and other people were getting familiar where that wasn't the case. And oh my God, it was like a breath of fresh air, not just punishing auto combo and not just dealing with it, you know, all the time. I started to enjoy the game a whole bunch more. Then I started to realize that the game is giving me like really high highs and almost at times really low lows. There's only a few fighting games that are like that in the past that I can sort of like feeling to, which is Dragon Ball FighterZ. And yeah, sometimes in Dragon Ball FighterZ, I was like, it's such a frustrating game to deal with some of this stuff. But then when you get used to it and you're doing your cool stuff, it's equally just as fun. I think that's a natural thing with versus games and tag games in general, is really high highs and really low lows. But I will say the way I was feeling throughout some of the games like Neutral and Moments, and the way I was overall feeling like what I'm playing right now, I've been here before, I feel like I've done this, and that was definitely Dragon Ball FighterZ. It is not the same though, because the way you sort of play this is like Dragon Ball FighterZ with assists that work differently, and tagging that works differently, obviously. But you do not have like instant transmission and you don't have super dash to worry about that can like always be this threat thing that you have to be aware and paying attention to, especially online. Those aren't present. So a lot of it is the big double jumping, backwards forward dashing neutral that you're kind of familiar with in a game like DBFZ. And the way characters, like I said earlier, especially Cap, are managing themselves at like jump canceling and aerial stalling and doing all of this, you know, unique mobility stuff in the air. I'm like, dude, I really feel like I'm fighting like a Goku right now in Dragon Ball FighterZ. It very much feels familiar. And a lot of the folks that are, you know, huge Dragon Ball heads, Hook and God and many others, the people that have historically been very good at Dragon Ball FighterZ are actually attaching themselves quite quickly to Tokon because the neutral kind of just makes sense to them. The way these characters move and get damage and do stuff sort of is similar in many ways to DBFZ. So I think if you're a person that really enjoyed Dragon Ball FighterZ like neutral and you like that part and you wanted to get to the purity of it, you want it to be less crazy than having, you know, super dash and instant transmission all over the place, I think Tokon's gonna make you very happy. And last up is the tagging, and this is probably one of the most important things to talk about because, yeah, Tokon inherently as a game does not have a mechanical incentive for tagging. Most tag games in general are going to give you health back or give you resources or something when you tag in a character to directly incentivize the player to encourage frequency of tagging. And right now, Tokon is a game that is riding a fine line between letting a player use an effective one character team with 3 assists or utilizing multiple characters on your team and finding a way to make that work within your own ingenuity. And funny enough, that's exactly what we were sort of predicting was going to happen from the Evo build of the game. It just seemed like there's a lot more to meets the eye to Tokon in terms of its functionality and in terms of how these teams work. And lo and behold, when most people like myself and 99.9% of people start playing it, it kind of still plays out like a 1v1 game. We even saw this almost exhaustively in the TNS tournament. People are sort of playing it safe, they're going for wins, they're trying to figure out what works. So a lot of that situation leads to 1v1 stuff. And there was a period in the beta where I was personally trying to just figure out how to get better and figure out more neutral, which made me not want to tag very much. Made me want to just figure out this one character, utilize my assists, not have the assists move around because they do when you're tagging. And I found myself like winning more. Like, granted, most of my impressions are coming from a space of like, I don't mean this to brag, but I won like 95% of the games. I think I lost like 5 or 6 matches out of like 300. But at the same point, I was getting like a little bored having all these characters and not being able to like directly get rewarded for tagging in some way that the game is providing, right? Through a mechanical incentive like health regen, like we said earlier. And then I started having a lot more fun when I was just tagging for the hell of it, man. I would just do some cool things where Doom would pop down, do the shield, pop them back, tag into another character. Screw it, man. I don't care if my assist order is getting fecked up. I don't give a shit. I started having just so much more fun with the game, not caring about like getting better from like a competitive standpoint and really trying to win matches. I just started enjoying it way more. Now, the thing is, I don't know if the developers want to change that moving forward. I talked about how there might be some incentives added in, but it sort of conflicts with the way the game is kind of operating. The game is operating in a way where they want you to be able to play at 1v1 and get access to everything, but also have all this insane tag stuff that could potentially be there, but you have to find it. And here's the thing. We talked about that iceberg a bit earlier. People like Sonic Fox, I have been watching play this game or play a multitude of fighting games for so long, and they're just able to figure out how a game works so fast it will blow your mind. Very few people were cracking open this Tokon iceberg within this beta period, as well as the majority of people of playing, but a select few, and Sonic Fox included, were really cracking open what is actually possible.
Why can't I say?
What? And this is where my last sort of feeling on the game is right now, where a lot of people, including myself, were just wanting to see more and wanting things to feel different and hoping that there was more beyond the hood. It's just that we could not get there yet. Tokon is a game that is the easiest to jump in if you want to be like a brand new player. The game is super mashy in an auto combo sense. You just literally hit your face against the controller and cool big supers and cool big combos will happen that do big and cool damage. But at the same point, there is a level of depth and nuance that go way, way, way below this iceberg than most people that are even huge high-level video game, high-level prowesses that have played a multitude of fighting games of over these years were barely even able to crack or comprehend within this beta session, much less at EVO. And that final criticism is that I think Tokon is like the easiest fighting game to play in the world, and also the most complicated. It's a very weird spot that I think might be intentional, where they're designing this game to be like the most accessible it possibly can with all of this 1v1 stuff, and that's what we're seeing a whole bunch of right now. But the true meat and bones of the game, figuring out stuff like this with insane low overhead mix, stuff like Ringe figuring out the fact that you can call neutral assists without utilizing some of the green bar at the top. It's like, whoa, that's really crazy. And that's kind of where Tokon, to me, is the most fascinating. This is one of those games where it's going to take a long time for the majority of people, much less new players or even existing players, to sort of wrap their head around the way this stuff works. Characters with overheads can naturally set up into hard to blockable overhead low mix, almost for costing nothing, man. It's really insane. The only way to get out of this stuff is that the game does have defensive mechanics like crossover that will let you escape those situations. So if you see your ass is about to get destroyed, yeah, you're gonna want to utilize your crossover, even if it gets perfect reflected. Who cares, dude? I didn't eat the full death combo, bro. I have the exact same relationship with Tokon as I did with Dragon Ball FighterZ a little while after like Dragon Ball came out, where when I was playing it, I was having a good time and then eventually was frustrated by some things, and that was absolutely the same in Tokon. But then when I'm not playing the game and watching other people play it and finding really cool stuff in Dragon Ball, I was like, oh, damn, dude, I want to play. Yeah, this character, they could do that. They could do, oh, man, that's super inspiring. This is really cool. And then you get back into it, and then the process just like refeeds into itself. That was happening to me all over again, man. The only issue in this beta is that I was exhausted. I streamed way too much for way too long. My ass has just not ever been designed for 12+ hour streams. I ain't that much of a gamer. But the time that I did have with it, with grinding with it, was a mixture of highs and lows, just like I've had with Dragon Ball FighterZ before. So to me personally, I think characters are going to do so much, man. The fact that this iceberg has all of this down below leads me to think that they might not mechanically incentivize tagging very much and actually just leave it up to player ingenuity to create the dirtiest, nastiest shit possible, which eclipses even some of the nastiest mix that you would see in games like DBFZ, man. Some of that stuff is gross, dude, leading to hard to blockable situations that you see in even games like Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. I enjoyed the beta, but at the same point, I had some frustrations, and I was kind of like feeling like I was on the teetering edge. There has to be more here. and there was a select few individuals that were able to discover that more as the beta was going along, and I think that stuff is the most inspiring. As I see that, that's where it's like, oh yeah, no, this game's gonna be crazy, dude. This game's actually gonna be crazy when people start figuring this stuff out. That's actually gonna get really crazy when there's way more characters and way more availability and access to more tools that just let you do that. My God, dude. And to be real, that's where I think Tokon is gonna end up being the most fascinating. And funny enough, I think the majority of folks and their first impressions are actually valid. The game doesn't really want to give you a ton of reasons to tag on its surface level. And that is a complete antithesis from the traditional tag fighter, and they want to give you reasons to tag. They want you to see a whole bunch of characters cycling in and out like over and over again. This game works differently. You get the full utility of your team towards the end instead of from the beginning, which is the way it normally works. There's a lot of people wanting to label that as good or bad, and I don't think there's an answer for that yet, and I don't think it's fair to answer that question yet either, because again, this iceberg is going to get actually deeper when we learn more, and it's not done yet, dude. There's a good reason why so many people are playing the game as a 1v1 right now, because it's literally designed to be that way. And for those of you that want to like get closer and really edge out the crazy stuff you can do with 4v4, that will be there. But I think that gap is going to be really significant. I think it's going to be a lot harder for people to grasp the tag mechanics in this game compared to most. And while is that necessarily a good or bad thing? We don't know yet. We don't know if people are going to be completely content with playing this like a 1v1 and really never diving any deeper, or if that stuff is like a hindrance to them in the future. And that's where I'm really curious if the devs make tagging a bit easier, or if they open up those windows a little bit more to allow folks to discover things maybe a bit quicker than obviously some of the best players in the world with no training mode and a relatively short beta time period. I think the no training mode is a big one because this game feels like, oh man, it needs training mode more than anything for you to actually get there. And in a beta session where those tools are really limited, you kind of are seeing the game for what it is at its surface level, and it may not be super impressive right at the start. Again, all fair criticisms of a game that's trying to do something very different. Either way, thank you guys a ton for watching the video. I'm looking forward if there's going to be another beta with more characters down the line, because we're looking at Tokon right now from this, like, you know, this little porthole. You cannot see the entire horizon of what the game is to offer, and that doesn't even apply to characters. It also applies to gameplay. There's a lot more out there to be discovered. Anyway, thank you dudes a ton for watching. Thank you for hanging out. I'll be back with more footage and coverage of characters as soon as we see more on it. I got a lot more gameplay to go over of the stuff that I played, so that'll be going up on the channel. Appreciate a thumbs up on the video. My name is Max, and I'll see you next time.